thank y'all for coming to Lake Fort Marina tonight. We're back here to our free bass fishing seminar. We do these every 2 weeks when I'm not going to Sam Rayburn Toledo Bend and getting my butt kicked in a tournament. We got Megabass. Megabass is Sunday, 2 days after this. Is there anybody here fishing Megabass? I know you are, Vic. Most of y'all are fishing. Good. Most of y'all are fishing Megabass. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to go a little bit in depth on several different techniques. And at any time if you have questions, ask them, please. We're going to talk about there's a wide variety of things that are going on Lake Fork right now, just because we're a little bit behind where we normally are. And on top of that, we've had some kind of extreme weather curveballs as far as like violent storms, dirtying up water. We have much dirtier water than we should have at this time of year. We also have colder water in parts of the lake than we should have at this time of year, which is why we're behind. And we got kind of a reset back with the ice storm, and then we've been slowly recovering, but we just haven't had those super warm March days where it's like 80 something for a high and like 60 something for low. And the low is much more important. We've had a lot of cool nights. We haven't had very many of the 60 something degree nights. And that's what really changes the water temperature, is the warm nights. When that water never cycles back down at night, when it stays warming through the night, and then the water temps climb quick all over the lake, we just really haven't had much of that in March. We just haven't. So we are behind. I think we're behind. But in areas of the lake, we're right on time. And there's some areas where you can do some fun stuff like throwing a frog. You can do some fun stuff like throwing a swim bait up with some junk. You can sight fish, even with the dirty water. We're going to talk about how to do all of those things tonight. And really the biggest goal of this whole deal tonight is to try to help all you guys that are fishing Megabass have as much fun catching fish. Now, whether or not you catch them under or over the slot, that's up to you, dog. The whole slot deal is a little bit of a roll of the dice out here with that slot limit, but we're going to try and get you some bites tonight. That's my goal in this whole deal tonight. So if anybody has anything that they want to ask anytime, like I said, if you got something right now, you can throw your hand up and ask a question right now. I just did a little brief live stream. I didn't get to do, normally every Thursday night we do top 5 baits. Now, I will tell you here, recently we haven't been doing much content at all. I've had just a whole lot of stuff off the water. Bryce, you got a question?
I don't know what to say.
You raise your hand like you're in school. Do you have a question or not? Not?
I don't know what to say.
You don't know what to say? You want to come show the camera your swim baits real quick? Okay. He's in on that. Come on, let's show off. Show them off. Turn around. These are the swim baits. Show the camera right there. Mr. Bryce picked out some good swim baits. It's got Jordan Lee's picture on the back, so it must be right. Like if he's got, it's like KVD back in the day, before he started getting his butt with. Although I don't know, KVD's still pretty good, but yeah, Jordan Lee's on a package. Jordan Lee, Jacob Wheeler, John Cox, any of those guys on a package. Yeah, I'll probably buy what they got to sell. How about you? Obviously you will. You just did. All right, go sit back down. So I've had a lot going on off the water, honestly. I mean, it's just been my life's been a little bit of chaos in my personal life away from fishing. So I've tried, but I haven't been very successful at posting content lately. It's hard for me to keep up with everything. And when I'm running at optimum levels, and a lot of you guys, Vic, like you know me personally, some of you guys in here know me personally, and y'all, like when everything's running efficient in my life, I'm maxed out. Like I'm maxed out. Like I pretty much when I'm awake, I'm working other than about 1 day a week when I go coach my kids in soccer and I hang out that night. And then other than that, I pretty much run maxed out. So anytime there's a disruption in that, it gets very hard for me personally to keep up with content as far as editing time, production time, even just doing live streams, you know. I had every intention of doing a live stream Tuesday, but I was on the water all day. 9 hours, 10 hours, about 11 hours gone from home between drive time and guiding. Then I had soccer practice, and then I had to get content out to send to Zach's channel so Zach could post the Rayburn video. I just can't do it all. So anyway, I apologize for not getting the content out. We were supposed to go live last night, but there's my customer from yesterday. And I caught a big one, and I was going to hand her my phone to take a picture of this big fish that I caught, and I dropped it, and it bounced on the seat, the passenger seat, and the riding seat in the bottom boat. Bounced on the seat, bounced straight up, and I was like, yes, it's going to bounce on the seat. And then it bounced on the seat again and took a hard right. and went right in the water. And it was kind of funny because like, oh, yeah, what just happened? Like it was like a whole range of emotions in about 1 second. But so I had no phone to go live with last night. I spent my evening last night after soccer practice chasing down a new phone and trying to get that thing turned on and activated. But we're all up and running now. But so we did a live stream for 10 minutes today, and there's a lot of things going on in Lake Fork, like we said. And to me, it's kind of, there's two things you can do in the springtime that are really effective. I'm not interested, and I know there's probably some guys with the advent, oncoming, general acceptance of live targeting sonars, whether it's active target or live scope, whatever you choose to use. I think there's some guys that are wanting to do that year round no matter what now. And I'm sure that you could go find some fish out there. But there's not very many fish deep enough to go use that technology. There's some, and I've got the Lowrance active target. We are using it some in some select areas. Very few fish that you can actually use that technology with. Most of the fish are on the bank and in junk. And by junk, I mean flooded vegetation, flooded bushes. Even if they're not spawning, they're thinking about spawning and they're in that stuff. So it's, if you use that stuff right now, you're targeting a very, very, very minute percentage of the fish on Lake Fork. And I've seen some guys out in the middle of the pond, and I'm assuming that's what they're doing because they're like this. By the way, if you can invest in anything right now, I know with the leadership in this country, people may not want to be investing in stuff, but I'll tell you one thing you should invest in: neck surgeons.
Ain't that true?
Because there's a whole generation of fishermen that are gonna need a lot of neck surgeries after doing this for 20 years.
All them crappie guys.
And that's the thing, right? It was always crappie, right? It was always crappie with this live technology, but it's not anymore. It's not just crappie. It's in the last 6 months to a year, it's become accepted by the general public for bass fishing, and it's become proven. And so it's such a big deal now. But right now, that's a stranger right there. You can see, boy, how you been, sir?
Yeah, we heard this loud guy up here. We figured we'd come.
My goodness.
How you doing, Bill?
Good to see y'all, man. Appreciate y'all stopping by. Appreciate y'all stopping by. There's just not enough out there to do that for me. I mean, I'm excited. I've got the active target now. I'm excited to use it. I use it every chance I get. But there's just not enough out there for me to be using it. There's just too much. And there's too many big fish. There's just, giants on the bank, like in this much water. It's a lot of the lake has that going on. And it's the spawning areas, right? The 65-degree water where you have mass. If you have 65-degree water, you've got a mass number of the fish in that area that are on the bank. And they're either on a bed or they're just about to be on a bed in a few days. And we've got a full moon coming in. That's pulling a lot of them in as well. If you're not doing that, if you're on the main lake, the south end of the lake, where the water is 57, today it was 59, 60. So there's probably some of those fish starting to get in pockets and spawn on the south end. A few, I'm sure. But the majority of the fish in that 59, 60 degree water, they're still really shallow. They're just really shallow on the staging points, the feeding point, the shell beds, right? Stuff we've talked about that a lot. So that's the two-way go this time of year for me. You're either rolling the dice with the shell beds, the staging points, the feeding points, or you're finding the warmest water you can and you're looking for the area that has the highest percentage of bass on beds or relating to those areas. To me, for Megabass this weekend, I think if you're fishing Sunday and you're trying to compete in that tournament, we've got a full moon Saturday night or Sunday night? Is it Saturday night? Sunday night. So either way, Saturday night or Sunday night, there's going to be a lot more fish, even on the south end of the lake, that are going to leave the staging areas and go to the spawning areas in the next day. Like, they're doing it right now. They're moving. That full moon coming is pulling them to the bank. Now, are they going to be on beds in mass quantities on the south end by Sunday? Probably not. Probably not. Typically, there'll be males on beds. The males will be on beds. The big giant females that you need to catch to win this tournament, to me, they tend to lock on the beds 2 to 3 days to 4 days after the full moon. So this tournament, you're just going to miss that spawning activity. But the important part to understand and to know, in my opinion, by the way, there's going to be plenty of people that probably disagree with me, and I can be wrong. You can always fish a shallow shell bed in the month of March and catch a giant. Like, always. You just need one bite in this deal. It's a big bass tournament. And you can always run shell beds all day, and you might get that bite. And they're a very high percentage area for that. But to me, the majority of the fish on those type of areas are going to be leaving those areas, and they are right now, and going to spawn. Now, I don't think that most of them will be spawning by Sunday, but they'll be ready to. So they're not going to be out there on those staging points this weekend. Some will, not many will. Does that make sense? Am I? Okay. So for me, if I'm fishing Megabass, if I'm rolling the dice, I'm spending my money, I'm fishing Megabass, I'm taking my chances in the warmest water I can find where I feel like there's females that have been in there. Maybe they've already spawned. Maybe they're post-spawn and they want to eat a frog. Maybe they're post-spawn, they'll eat a wacky worm, whatever it is. If I'm looking for a 24-inch over, I'm taking my chances in the warmest water I can find, even if it's dirty. Just because I feel like there's a much higher percentage of the fish, the big fish, that are going to be in and be aggressive and locked on and in a bad mood and not be just kind of just getting there and not quite ready yet. Because y'all know, I mean, spawning bass, it's a cycle with these big females. With these giants, it's a cycle. They pull in there, and when they pull in there and they're looking for a bed, they're about to get on, they're really, really hard to catch. Like, extremely hard to catch because they're in a stagnant mentality. They're in kind of just a holding pattern, so to speak. They're not feeding anymore. They're not on the shallow points. They're not eating gizzard shad all day. They've left that. They're done with that. They're ready to go get on a bed and find a partner. But if they're not already on the bed and committed to that bed, they're not aggressive. So they're they're almost like suspended fish that pull out in the middle of the lake and suspend, but they're shallow. They just aren't quite there yet. And anytime we have massive waves of spawning fish come in when the conditions line up and massive waves of spawning fish come in, the few days before the week before they start spawning, the few days before they start spawning, it gets really, really tough. It's just like the calm before the storm, before that first major wave of spawning fish. It happens every year. So for me, if I'm fishing megabass, I'm looking for the warmest water where the fish have been aggressive and locked into those areas for the longest amount of time. Because they're either on a bed or they're just off it and they're hungry. They're tired and they're hungry. Tired and hungry are going to play into the techniques that you use in those areas. The best techniques for those fish that have come off a bed, okay, so you're in a spot area that's warm, it's been warm for a while, but you can't sight fish because it's too muddy. The techniques that are going to play there are going to be the movement without movement deal that we've talked about in the past is going to be a big player there. So what I mean by movement without movement, I mean a bait that can create a lot of movement without moving forward very fast because they're tired when they come off beds. So they don't want to really chase stuff down necessarily. But if something's going to sit there over their head and they can kind of just go, they'll get it. If you can keep it in their face long enough and irritate them and cause a reaction, they'll bite it. It's one of the reasons when we get to late March and all throughout April, a frog becomes one of the best baits you can, a hollow body frog becomes one of the best baits you can throw. Because you can sit there and make that frog turn back and forth and it doesn't really leave them. Okay? Swim baits are good when you have fish in heavy cover, and weedless swim baits are good for heavy cover because you can go through all of it, and you have wind. Because the wind creates a problem where they can't really see the bait coming and it surprises them more, and that swim bait's coming through all that cover and they just lash out at it because it almost spooks them into biting. It's a total reaction bite. And you'll know because the way they bite that swim bait is like, it's not like they're pecking at it or trying to chew it or eat it. They just lash out at it and they knock the snot out of it. They hit it really, really hard. So the frog and the swim bait, you guys experienced that with me yesterday. It was when it was calm, it was a frog. When it was windy, it was a swim bait. And we caught them all day. Now today, for whatever reason, was really tough on me. All week's been really good. Wednesday, we didn't get a whole lot of bites. In fact, we only got like 8 bites Wednesday. But I mean, we had like a high 20s bag, and we had a 9.5 pound over, and a 7 pounder, and a whole bunch of good fish to go behind it. So, a few good fish to go behind. She said a whole bunch. We only got like 8 fish, but it was Wednesday wasn't a good numbers day, but the big fish were there, and everything that we did was caught on Wednesday was caught on baits where you create a lot of movement without movement. The biggest fish was caught on the swim jig, but we were fishing the swim jig. You throw it in there and let it go to the bottom, and you shake it as you slowly reel it in. So it's like sitting there doing this, but it's not really moving, you know. And then wacky worms. Like big Cincos, like oversized Cincos. Great way to catch a big post spawn fish, or even a spawning fish, really. But it's a great way to take a bigger size Cinco, like a 6-inch Cinco, 7-inch Cinco, wacky rig it, and it shimmies. Everybody knows those Cinco, they shimmy when they fall, but it's staying right in their face. Just another bait that creates some movement, gets a reaction without moving out of their way. So those are kind of the baits that we're using. As far as how to fish, the different techniques, we'll go over the swim bait first because that's like the easiest thing in the world. I told them yesterday when we started catching them on swim bait, I'm like, this is the best guide bait ever. Because all you do is with a swim bait, with a weedless swim bait, you throw it out there and you point right down the line, right at it, and you reel. And just reel fast enough to keep the tail kicking. The best swim bait for me has been the hollow body. It has so much vibration. The Smash Tech hollow body, which is for sale downstairs, it has so much vibration. And I've been using the Pearl Flash because the water is dirtier, right? We've had some lack of visibility issues here lately. So that Pearl Flash has a white, bright white side and belly with a hard black top. So it really has a good contrast. It flashes at them as it vibrates, and that white shows up good in that dirty water. Lost my train of thought here. But the swim bait's really simple. You just throw it out there and reel it in. And I'm throwing it on anywhere, like, you can throw it on just about anything, like a 7.2 to a 7.5 medium heavy. The one I throw it on is the 7.4 medium heavy Lux series rod, and I throw it on 20-pound fluorocarbon. And I can really, even that like flooded, that nasty pondweed stuff that we got out here, like that gator grass pondweed stuff, man, you can't hardly fish nothing to do that, right? You can just, if you point at that swim bait, it will reel right through it. Now, if you have an angle coming out of your rod, so if you got your rod down or up or to the side, that rod will bend and allow that jump to load up on the bait and bog it down. But when you point straight at it, it puts direct pressure on the bait, and it just bulldogs right through all that stuff. So that's an important part of the technique, is just pointing at it.
Is there any clear water right now?
There's plenty of clear water down here. Like the water down here, like like the shell bed areas that are the most popular around here, probably around the mouth of Little Caney and the mouth of Cheney and all that, outside of Dale Creek, like that water's really, really clear. I mean, not like crystal clear, but for Lake Fork, it's green, it's clear, it's good visibility. But that's cold water. And so anywhere that the water's warmer does have a stain. One of the biggest keys, though, for the clear water within the warm water is that pondweed and that gator grass. If you can get in the areas that have that pondweed and that gator grass, because of the rain we've had lately, there's a gap. In a lot of sections, there'll be a gap between the shore, between the bank, and the start of the pondweed. And that inside grass line, from there to the bank, that water is a lot cleaner than the water in the creek. And anybody's been fishing out here today or yesterday, whenever, you've seen that. If you've gotten around that pondweed, when you get behind it, that water's extremely clean. And you can actually bed fish. And there's bed fish in those areas, and you can sight fish them. We've been doing it, But as far as clean water all throughout the creek and the areas where fish are spawning, there's not really. I mean, the storms we've had have just been too violent. The one we had night before last? Yeah, because it was the morning, yeah. So Wednesday night, the storm we had, it was violent. It rained hard, really. I mean, the top of the metal sign out there got ripped off, and that's been here since I've been coming here. It got ripped off. I had shingles in my driveway, bro. Like, I'm missing some shingles on the roof. Like, it got after it that night. Anytime you get that kind of wind and that kind of rain and that speed, yeah, all the areas that tend to get the warmest also tend to get the most flow. Because the further back you go in these creeks, the shallower the water is, it's going to warm up faster. That's also, the further back in the creeks is where you're going to get the flow. So those areas are staying. And today was a really tough day, but our two best fish came in some filthy, dirty water. Filthy, dirty water on the white swim bait.
You flashy swimmer,
I'm flashy swimming it, yeah, for sure, when the water's stained. The only time I like the flashy swimmer on the small swim baits. Now, I'm also throwing the big one, the bigger hollow body. So when they start biting the smaller hollow body, you can throw the bigger 6-inch one on an 8/0 owner beast hook and catch, you're going to catch fewer fish, but you're going to get a bigger bite. Like, every time you swing on that, it may not be an over, but it's going to be a stud. Like, it's going to be a good one. So they are biting the bigger hollow. Like, when they start biting that little one, pick that big one up. You'll get some bites on it. But like today, they weren't really biting good at all. So we just threw the small. I never threw the bigger one. So But on the smaller swim baits, I really like the flashy swimmer. To answer your question, I really do like the flashy swimmer. The only time that I really go away from it is if I'm fishing open, clear water. So, like even in the summertime when the water gets really clear, if I'm fishing a lot of vegetation, if there's coontail and hydrilla, and I'm fishing that swim bait through hydrilla or coontail, I'm going to use a flashy swimmer even in clear water. But if I'm fishing open, clear water, I go away from that. Does that make sense?
Green algae junk just
Yeah, that green
wears it out.
That green algae, yeah. If you get around that witch's hair or the dead
Whatever
grass, it'll wad up on it. But you just got to keep it higher in the water column, you know? Yeah, just keep it higher in the water column, keep it above that stuff. But I do like having that blade on there in most situations on those smaller swim baits. I don't think it hurts anything to add a little bit of vibration, a little bit of flash on a bait like that. Now, Heath Taylor, who's one of the best swim bait fishermen that I know, the owner of Smash Tech, he's like a swim bait purist. He's one of these weird dudes. It's just all he wants. Like you go fishing with Heath Taylor, and he might have 10 rods on the deck, and it's like 10 different swim baits. Like he's a swim bait guy, and he looks at that flashy swimmer as like a disgrace. Like it's shameful to be putting. He says I don't need no jewelry on my swim bait. That's what he tells me. So
That's why we have Smash Tech.
Yeah.
What is the swim bait he wanted?
yeah, like yes, and he's very particular about the baits he makes. His swim baits are amazing. Like,
Oh, yeah.
He plays with and tinkers with and tweaks baits more than anybody you could ever imagine before he'll ever sell them. In fact, the hollow belly that I'm talking about so much tonight, it wasn't coming out. He was going to keep it, like he got it right, and he was going to keep it for himself and not sell it. And I went in his shop one day, and I was like, what's that? He's like, oh, nothing. I'm like, no. Now I really want to know. What is that? And so he told me about it. The next time we went fishing, I made him let me throw a couple on. We were filming, and I just start whacking them on it. And I looked at him about halfway through that day. I said, hey, you know you got to add these for sale on your website, right? Because when this video comes out, everybody's going to want this swim bait because we're smashing them. And so that's kind of the story of how that swim bait even came to the market. It was just a pure accident of me seeing it in his shop. Then I begged him for it. I stole one out of his tackle box in his boat when we were fishing. And then it was all on video, so he had to start selling them. So y'all are welcome.
Are you fishing really super slow or?
You know, not really. When that water gets in the mid 60s, I speed it up, and that's the hollow belly. That's when it starts playing to me, because when you fish that hollow belly, it's got a really fast wiggle to it. When you fish other swim baits that aren't hollow belly, it's more of maybe a head wiggle. On the good ones, they'll have a head wiggle, and they'll have like a tail wag. But you can go slower with them, and they'll have like a slower tail wag and a slower head wiggle. That hollow body, you can't go too slow with it, or it just won't do nothing. But when you reel it at a medium to fast retrieve, man, it's got a vibration and the whole body shakes like nothing. It's almost a chatterbait that's weedless. I mean, it really almost is. So when I fish that hollow belly, I have to reel it faster. And when the water gets to be in the mid 60s, that 64, 65 mark, that's when I start looking to throw that hollow belly. And we're just getting there in some areas of the lake where it's like you can get some morning temps at 64, 65. And when I'm talking about water temps, guys, I'm not talking about the sun's been beating on it at 79, the sun's been beating on it at 5 o'clock, it's 68. But that morning it was 63. No. We're talking about morning water. Like when your morning water temps are in the mid 60s, that's when you can start adjusting the way you fish and fish more aggressively and know that fish are in there and locked on beds and have been there for a while. If you've got water temps that are established in the morning over 60 in the mid 60s, there's going to be fish that have been spawning for quite a bit. And they're going to be aggressive. They've been in there for a while. So
You catching quite a few 24s right now or no?
quite a few. I mean, quite a few. I mean, it's
Well, I thought you caught them at 3 or 4 a day.
that's the mythology of Lake Fork guides, right? Like the reality is that all of us that fish for a living, including the guys on the biggest tours in the world, struggle a lot more than people think we do.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. I did.
Yeah. No, I mean, no. Yes.
Overall, the lake.
Overall, the lake's kicking them out. Overall, the lake's kicking them out this week. It is in the areas where they're spawning.
Yeah.
You know, I saw an Instagram post from Zach Hughes last night, and he had 2 over 24 yesterday. Now, he was bed fishing because that's Zach Hughes. Zach Hughes can also see them in dirtier water than anybody I've ever seen. Like, he's probably the best bed fisherman I know. And he can see fish in dirty water that nobody else sees. He can see them deeper, and like he's got eyes that are magical, and he's the best bed fisherman that I know. So, but that just goes to show you what's up there. And you know, the over we caught Wednesday we caught on a swim jig, but that fish was spawning for sure because we caught that fish. She was kind of empty, like she was spawning. Like she'd been on the bed, she dumped the eggs. She was 24 1/4 inches, and a pre-spawn Lake Fork bass at 24 1/4 inches is going to weigh over 10. I've caught plenty of fish in the slot that weighed over 10. So this fish had definitely been on a bed. Plus, my guy Wednesday threw in there, and he didn't know he had a bite because the fish just kind of sucked it in and was swimming towards him, and he just could never catch it with a swim jig. And then by the time he swung, she had spit it out. And he turned around and threw. He gathered himself, turned around, threw right back in the same spot, cranked it once, and she bit it again, and he got her that time. So the fact that she looked like she looked and that she bit twice on the same spot, that's a spawning bass. That's just a spawning bass where the water was too dirty, you couldn't see her. So, yeah, the lake's kicking out. And I don't, me and Zach Hughes are good friends. So I see his post on social media. Whenever I look at social media, when I'm on there doing my stuff, his post will pop up on my feed because we're friends. Most of the guys out here, I have no idea what they're doing. I have no idea what most of the guys on this lake are doing. So if out of the few guys that I keep up with, there was 3 overs caught in the last couple of days, yeah, the lake's kicking them out.
Yeah.
And we've caught enough, we're just not really catching any small fish up shallow. We're 3-pounders, 4-pounders is the smallest fish that we're catching. Everything we catch is pretty much over 3 or 4 pounds. I think when y'all were with me, we had one that was under 3 or 4 pounds. Everything, it just...
So everything's 17, 18 inches.
Or bigger.
Yeah.
Or bigger. Yeah.
I mean, nothing you can weigh. So.
No, for me, the fish, but I don't target under. But I'm going to tell you, now, if you want to target, everything I'm talking about is geared toward trying to catch an over. Everything I'm talking about right now is geared towards trying to catch over the slot fish. If you want to try to target it under, you can. And if I was doing that, then I would go do the same thing, but I would go finesse. I throw a wacky worm, throw a wacky rig trick worm in those same areas behind that pondweed where the warm water is. Slow down, throw that wacky rig trick worm, throw that Cinco, throw the regular size Cinco, throw a fluke. I know there's some guys out here that have been catching big numbers on flukes.
I threw a float most of the day today, and I didn't get but one bite.
Who fished today? Who struggled today? Most of us.
Ish. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's been great all week. Today was it sucked. I don't know why. I couldn't really put my finger on it. I did I ran every different kind of pattern I could today. For whatever reason, today was tougher. I don't know if we weren't really, it was really cold this morning. It was 46, and I did notice that some of my morning time 65, 66 degree water this morning was 62, 63. And we always talk about it. It's way more about the trend than it is the actual temperature. 62, 63 degree water is pretty good unless it was 67 last night. You know what I mean? And it dropped 5 degrees in a few hours, in 8 or 10 hours. That trend can make their metabolism, make everything with the cold-blooded nature, makes everything slow down for them. They kind of shut down. And so it seems like the majority of us struggle today. And I think it was that cold morning that did it more than anything.
So is the bite right now, is it early in the morning, mid-morning? Or?
It's better as the day goes on, for sure. For sure, it gets better as the day goes on. By the time you get to 9, 10, 11 o'clock, you should be getting some bites. If you're not, you need to adjust what you're doing. It kind of peaks to me right after lunchtime, noon to 2, maybe 3. It peaks and then it starts slowing down again. It's when the sun's the highest is the best bite right now, for sure. Every day. Yeah. Any other questions?
So we can sleep in Sunday then.
You can. You might not want to though, because at Megabass, in these hourly tournaments, there's that first hour. There's a strategy to that first hour. You can catch a real small fish and catch a check in that first hour if you're on top of things. If you go out there and catch a 1 3/4 pounder, you might get paid on that in the first hour. Maybe not in Megabass, but for sure, in Sealy's and stuff, you can get pound and a halfers and catch checks the first 2 hours because people are out there, unless they've got a really big under or an over, they're just not coming in for that first hour weigh-in. A lot of times there's actually spots left unpaid in those hourly tournaments in the first hour.
Yeah.
So anything under the slot can get a check. So. But yeah, as far as the bite being better, it's definitely better as the day goes on. Now, the feeding bite, the shell bed bite, is kind of better in the morning. For me, I don't know that it's better in the morning, but here's my deal. I'll go unless there's no wind. If there's no wind at all, I'm not even going to the shell beds. I'm not even like that. I need wind for that to work. I've tried it without wind over the last month and it ain't worked, so I'm done. Like there's too many fish up shallow right now. Too many fish spawning. Too many fish that'll bite a frog when it's calm. Like that frog's best when it's calm, so I'll go do that. But
And you're talking about shallow shell beds.
shallow shell beds, yeah, 2 to 4 foot. Even today, saw some in less than 2 foot, where there was loons active. We got a bite here, bite there, in really shallow water on the shell bed. Yes, very shallow. Generally speaking, right now it's been 2 to 4 foot. But I'll start. My mornings will start on a little bit deeper edges of them, 6 foot, 5 foot, stuff like that. We'll go there and throw a Carolina rig and a jerk bait, swim bait around those deeper parts of the shell beds for the first hour or two, and then we'll go shallow once the sun gets up. Because other than the frog deal, and really you still kind of need to warm up for that frog deal, the shallow stuff is pretty dang tough first thing in the morning, from 7 to 9. But then once you get to 9, they start kind of biting and that stuff. And then by the time you're at noon, 1, it's kind of at its peak. Yeah. That's what I've been seeing anyway.
Small swim baits in the mornings on shell beds or big?
No, not small. Well, I've been throwing one that's kind of small, but it doesn't really have a small profile. I'm throwing that 6-inch whale, which is, it's not a really like small swim bait, but it's like a 5.25-inch swim bait. So it's kind of a medium size. But I'm putting it on a jig head, which adds another 1/4 to 1/2 inch to the length of it. So by the time you're done, I mean, it covers the majority of your hand. So it's a medium sized swim bait is what I would say.
Okay.
That's been my best one, and the reason why is because down here on these shell beds the water's colder, and so the hollow body's not. I'm not throwing a hollow body on the south end shell beds.
Okay.
The water's too cold for that hollow body. It's 59 this morning, 57 most days lately. So I'm throwing a swim bait that I can reel slow, and it has a slower tail kick. And I'm throwing it on that jig head because I throw that jig, and that jig head just slides across that shell real good. But I've still got that exposed top hook where my hookup ratio is phenomenal. I don't lose any. You know, you don't have any. Even if they just swipe at it, you tend to get them a lot on that top hook on that jig head.
What else are you throwing?
About 3/8. Yeah, 3/8. I mean, I got a big box. Sometimes I might grab a 1/2 ounce by accident or whatever, but it doesn't matter. I'm letting it bump and bang the bottom. Like when I'm fishing that jig head swim bait, it's hitting the bottom.
So no line throughs or anything like that right now.
Yeah, there's guys throwing line throughs. And a line through is good because you can fish it so slow. But a line through is more of a, you're looking for one.
Over the top. Just
Yeah, it stays over the top of them. Yeah, you can't let that get to the bottom. But it's hard to let a line through get to the bottom. It stays really high in the water. The good ones stay really high in the water
As soon as you
column.
start touching
The line through that I would throw right now is probably the Felon, the Smash Tech Felon.
Yeah.
Man, again, I'm not throwing a lot of these just humongous giant swim baits anymore these days. I think everybody kind of
6
does
to
it
8
now.
inches. Yeah.
I think everybody throws the big swim baits, you know, like the Convict and other ones like that in the 7-inch, 8-inch category. And I feel like a lot of times if I just, like the Felon is a little bit smaller profile. It's like a 6.5, 7-inch swim bait line through, but it's got a great action. You can fish it extremely slow. And I think just having it a little bit smaller kind of gets me more bites. I get more bites on it than I do with the bigger ones. So, I mean, it's still a big swim bait. I'm still getting big bites on it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not catching small fish on it.
Yeah.
But if I downsize it just an inch, it's like I get more bites. Yeah.
More they'll commit to it. Even
Especially
though
on
it's-
this lake. You know, on this lake, they see so many of those.
I mean, because you got
Every
people,
guy-
you got people on both ends of the spectrum. You got a guy throwing a 12-inch. You
Bro,
got a guy
every
throwing a
guide
3-inch.
that I see right now, every guide that I see on the shell beds is like throwing some swim baits. It's like this long or whatever it is. It's huge. Like you can see it from a mile away.